Good morning, Pastor Ron Jetter on Saturday the 30th of January 2021. I'm a fan of Monday Night Football. I've been watching it since I was in high school. That's when I really became interested, back when Terry Bradshaw and the Steel Curtain, Mean Joe Green, Stallworth and Swan, Rocky Blyer, Franco Harris, Chuck Noll, and his dynasty, the Steelers. I loved the Steelers. They were great. My first I even have a shirt, a number 7 Ben Roethlisberger jersey. I know. I have a Seahawks shirt too, so don't get completely upset there. Anyway, Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church, Grandview, Washington. I have been doing this since March or April. I said, knowing we would probably be into some kind of COVID restrictions for 6, possibly as long as 8 weeks, that I would do a daily message just so people would have something. I had been named interim pastor of Immanuel and couldn't necessarily go out and visit people the way I would like to have. A lot of the facilities where people lived were locked down. There were all sorts of restrictions. And even people at home were now starting to practice this mask wearing and something called social distancing. Social distance, isn't that an oxymoron? But we knew that if we could get through Lent, that probably by Easter we'd be back in the church. And Easter came and went, and I thought, well, I'm doing daily messages. I'm going to keep doing daily messages. And then we had kind of the lull. In May it looked pretty good, and then summer hit, and then it started spiking, and it looked like it was going to be probably midsummer before we opened everything back up again. And I kept doing daily messages, and somewhere in the summer decided to start on the Torah, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, and I won't even get through the 4th. I am in chapter 16 of the book of Numbers. We won't even get to Deuteronomy unless there's a lot of requests that I continue this. If I hear from you, if you email me at meetjetandSue@gmail.com, meetjetnsue@gmail.com, meetjetandSue@gmail.com. Let me know, and I will continue them. I will take the month of February off at least, because there's a new pastor coming along, and that new pastor needs space, because this is the last time I introduce myself as the pastor of anyone, anything, or anywhere. I'm going to be a citizen, a civilian again. But summer came and went, and we got through Genesis, Exodus. We did open up the church and start worshiping on September 20th, and have had as many as 17 people on a Sunday morning, socially distanced and masked, with all of the protocols, airflow, sanitizing. We don't share communion together. Everyone has their individual sanitized unit, which they pick up and then dispose of, never having touched by anyone else. So most are still online, and I have continued to do the daily message. It just didn't seem like there was ever a good time to stop, and I've kind of enjoyed it. It gets me into the Word, back into the stories that I love. And these stories, so many of them, are simple little ones that somebody can take and blow all out of proportion and make into like the prayer of Jabez. Someone wrote a book about the prayer of Jabez. It's not even a full verse. And somebody named Jabez, it's the only time they get mentioned. They made a prayer that they not cause harm. And someone wrote a book, and it became the latest thing among Christians. I gotta have it. Have you got it? Let's give it as a gift. Christians are suckers for gimmicks. It's just the way it seems to be. Suckers for a gimmick. We love to short circuit our faith. And boy, are we like the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. Anything we can do to short circuit our faith, hedge our bets, and make it easier than simply getting into the Word and getting down on our knees, studying, praying, singing, praising, Thank, praise, serve, and obey God every day of our lives, as Pastor Harry Went would say. He's the author of what's called the Divine Drama. Thank, praise, serve, and obey. Thank you, Pastor Harry, for giving me that. If we can focus on that. Wow. Grumble, crave, nah, I don't fit into thank, praise, serve, and obey. So we have in the rest of Numbers, and I'm not going to cover it all, but we have these stories. We have the revolt of one of the groups of Levites, Korah, K-O-R-A-H, Korah. And Korah became the name of a Shriner's temple back in the U.S. some time ago. And so we take names out of the Old Testament, and a lot of the Masonic and Shriners have borrowed Old Testament names, Eldad, Medad. But then we get again two side tracks. We get parallel tracks. One taking the historical narrative forward, one giving us the ritual details, the priestly details. And I want to focus in on one of these priestly details. I could jump in on chapter 21, Moses lifting up the bronze serpent in the wilderness. Those who look upon it will live, and that bronze serpent becomes the symbol of medicine of the American Medical Association, the serpent on a stick. That's in chapter 21. You want to read about that, but I want instead to do two quick things: Balaam, Balak, and the ashes of the red heifer. They were told to take an unblemished red heifer and burn it completely, and it even says, and its dung, burn it and turn it into ash, and then take that ash and make a circle around the encampment with that, and then you will use little bits of that ash for water. And they make holy water out of the ash of the red heifer. So this story of the ash of the red heifer may have then influenced the early church into taking ash and using it in a ritual way. The ash ritual is, of course, known as the imposition of ashes, and it happens one day a year for Christians, and it begins the season of Lent. Ash Wednesday, and it's coming up in February. Next month we'll have Ash Wednesday. Well, I was ordained in 1985, and I learned how to make ashes, taking the palm branches from Palm Sunday the previous year, which would have been 52 weeks minus 6.5 weeks. So they're pretty dry, and they're stored in a closet or a basement or somewhere. The pastor then takes those ashes, burns them in a bucket, and then grinds them into a very, very fine black ash. And then those ashes can be mixed with water or dry or oil, and then the sign of the cross is made on the forehead with the ash. A lot of pastors will go online, or back in the old days, get out the catalog and make a phone call and call up any of the companies who can sell you ashes, and they'll say, how many ashes do you need? Oh, I have 25, 50, or 100. How many people are going to be at church? Well, and that's the number of people who they'll send ashes for. Well, I began preparing my own ash, and then after a while, I realized I was making more than I needed. That didn't stop me from making them. So I have what I call the reliquary of the palm ash. And it's probably, volume-wise, maybe 1.5 to 2 cups of just palm ash from the last 35 years of burning palmly. And I haven't done it every year, but almost every year. And I call this my version of the ash of the red heifer. I have this one, which was given to me by my good friend, Pastor Katie Haney, now retired, to use in the sanctuary. It holds just enough for the service, and that's probably actually enough for 2 or 3 years worth. But this then is full of ash as well. And I have taken it to restaurants where people cannot get off work on Ash Wednesday, and I have done the imposition of ashes for them sometimes. So the ashes, that's part of the ritual. I appreciate the ritual aspect, and I love the story, even though it's really a very brief story, the ceremony of the ash of the red heifer and the making of holy water. Is water holy? Is water unholy? I don't see that water's any different, but somehow the ash reminds us, without God, we are dust. And then Balak and Balaam. Balak was the king of a people who lived across the Jordan River, and the Israelites are coming. They're going to conquer Balak, and they're going to conquer the Amalekites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Moabites and all of those. And so Balak has a seer, Balaam, and he says to this seer, I want you to go and bring me back a vision of how I can defeat Israel. Well, and then we have the story in chapters 22 and 23 and 24 of how Balaam's donkey then starts to talk. God gives Balaam's donkey. And then Balaam is given the ability to speak only what God tells him to. And so King Balak expects Balaam to curse the Israelites. Instead, Balaam ends up blessing the Israelites. And Balak says, well, how can we defeat them? And Balaam's only advice is, get them to worship other gods. That sets up some of the rest of the book of Numbers. And I encourage you to read it. Thank you. It's been a great journey. Signing off now. I'll see you maybe